Hi, everyone. This is the package group, and this is our monthly Think Big, which actually where we discuss some ideas that are a little further along than beyond the next milestone or two. Hi, Dan. And we have a few things on our agenda, so I think it might be worth jumping in if there are no questions. Okay, so the first thing that I think is worth mentioning is something that I've been working on over the past few weeks is updating our maturity targets for the stage. So maturity targets are used, something I learned while I was the CEO shadow is that the maturity targets get pulled up regularly during investor calls, during customer conversations, and during prospect conversations. So having these targets displayed and accurate is something that's really useful for the sales team and for our customer success team. I will share my screen because I think it's easier. And if Dan doesn't like it, he could tell me. So basically, I created this epic of epics that houses all of our maturity targets for each of our product categories. And I tried to put them in at least some semblance of priority order. And so we basically, right now, the main three epics that we're working on is the package registry, making that complete, the dependency proxy, and the container registry. And then generally we see Helm chart repository on there, making the registry lovable, making the package registry lovable. And then further down, we see making release evidence viable and making the dependency firewall minimal, which doesn't exist today. So that's kind of like the first high level priority. And then we could dive into each of these epics. One nice thing, well, it's not that nice, but you can look at the roadmap view. And these high level epics just match our dates that our maturity targets are set to. So that the individual issues underneath them are not mapped to dates yet. We haven't done that, but at least you could see like, okay, well, we intend for the registry to be complete in May, and maybe that needs to be adjusted as we get closer, but you could generally see where we're going with sort of the making the features lovable going out pretty far into 2023. So it's a long roadmap, so we don't have to go over all of it today, but I thought it would be helpful just to point everyone to these this resource, and then maybe just go through a few things that I'm thinking and open it up to questions. So for making the package registry complete, I have basically, I'm thinking about making the feature complete as the breadth of the category. So we've in the past year and a half now of being together, we've added in a lot support for a lot of different formats. You can see we moved the feature to core. We added in support for Python, NuGet, Composer. We updated the user interface and NuGet. So what I have on here is finishing some of the work around the generic package repository, which is really just adding tagging at this point. So that feature is pretty close. We're adding Rubygems. I think this will be really valuable both for our users, but also for dog fooding. This will be something that GitLab will be able to use. And we're working on this in 13.9 and 13.10, maybe 13.11 as well. And then I also have on here RPMs, which is aside from Rubygems, our most frequently requested package manager support. People are always asking for Linux support. And on that note, also we have Debian packages as well here. And there's a rather large community contribution that's in progress here, but I'm sure that we may need to do some follow-up work in the future at some point too.
And just as a FYI on that one, I kind of expect that the Debian MVC will be delivered in 13.10, maybe.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that'll be exciting.
And that includes everything that we expect in an MVC, where you can authenticate and build and publish.
Yeah, and probably even a little bit more because this user is pretty ambitious.
Go Matthew, right?
Yep.
So yeah, any questions on the package registry being complete? Is anything stand out as missing or excessive?
Do we have anything regarding how polished and refined each feature should be? not of the scope of the package manager, but every single package manager, this is the level that we want to reach, having this and this functionality, or this is level of security. I don't know.
Yeah, I think probably the things that we've identified, where's that Ruby MVC one? The things that we identify here as being the MVC for any package manager basically are that we have documentation for how to set up GitLab as your remote, that you can authenticate with your GitLab credentials. Being more specific, I think that's probably your job token and your deploy token. And then you're able to push and pull packages and delete them. We actually not included in the MVC right now are some of the basic user interface for the package managers, but that would be fast follow. So even though it's not mentioned in the maturity targets, you'll see that we did have the overall polish for the package registry included there. So that's like kind of included the redesign.
I wonder if, because I like that idea that Nico has brought up, if it would be useful maybe in like either in an issue or on that like how to create a package manager doc page that we have, if there was like a list of, you know, these are the 5 things to make it complete, these are the 5 things to make it lovable, these are the 10 things to make it whatever, the different sort of levels. That'd be kind of cool just to see a list, so at any given time we can say like, you know, where is each package manager at right now?
That would be cool even to have that visualized somewhere too.
Or like like a table with each one.
Okay, cool. Any other questions on the package registry front?
I don't see anything for cleanup policies. They are out of the scope, or?
Yeah, I think I have that in Lovable. No. Okay. Well, yes, here it is. It's in the make the package registry lovable. So it's this one, make it easier to find and delete packages. And then here we see the problem validation and then the issues that we have so far for like things like remove branch related packages on merge, an API to delete files from a package. And then we have the design issue, which will turn into an implementation issue. So I didn't want to hold off on moving us to complete for the cleanup policies, even though I see an argument for that. I just thought it would be better to kind of limit the scope of the next maturity target to just breadth. Can you use this feature? Can we get people in the door? And then the next thing, making it lovable, would be kind of, we could just skip to that. Setting your registry to private or public, making it so search and cleanup, and then identifying image packages as protected. So similar to protected branches. And there might be more things that we add here once we clear this hurdle, but for now, that's at least what we're putting there. Any other questions before I move on to the container registry? Okay, so for the container registry, I think this one probably still needs a little bit of cleanup, but generally, obviously, an important one here is enabling zero downtime garbage collection, which I think everyone knows that we're working on. We have the cleanup policies for tags, and this epic, I think, is what needs cleaning. It has some issues in here that probably aren't required for us to reach the next maturity target, but some things that are important. Rolling, making sure that it scales, making sure that we roll it out for GitLab.com, and then having a dry run and forced run added to the feature. Those could all be included, but there might be some, I need to go through here. There might be some things here that are not required for the maturity target, so I should do that. And then this bug has just been, it drives people crazy right now. There is a workaround for this, but if you delete your project or group, it breaks the container registry, and then you have to run some manual script to delete them. So that's something that we would like to include in this maturity target. And then something that I know Nico and Ian and I are passionate about is reworking the user interface for the container registry. And then this includes a bunch of issues that Ian and Nico have opened based on designs that have been validated with folks in the community. So that's kind of cool. And then the other thing that is worth mentioning on here is having the pull count and some of the data for for storage usage. That's really important for the consumption pricing that's rolling out later this year. And so being able to show some storage statistics will be important. And then this is one of our most popular issues. I'm not sure if we'll ever be able to do this, or if we will once we have the manifest database, but remove branch related images on merge. So similar to the way that you could squash previous commits, basically any image or package for that matter that was created as part of the dev branch could be deleted upon merge. That would be an awesome feature, a really way for developers to passively clean up their registries.
Are we currently tagging those images as they're created as part of the branch so that we could go back and do that? Or is that like part one of this effort?
I think that's part one probably. Right now, no, there's no association with an image to a branch or even a project for that matter, really. Although if it was using like an automatic, if they were doing it there on their own, but we don't have any way of knowing that programmatically.
You'll probably need to define a naming convention for this to work. So people can expect that to happen if they follow a given naming convention. Otherwise, I think this needs some work from runner, because that's the only way to find out which images were built from a given pipeline and from which branch a pipeline was created, and then if that branch has been merged or not. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. It feels like we could actually get some little pieces of that done relatively easily to give us a hand later on. But yeah, cool. Thanks.
No problem. So yeah, these are. I'm open to feedback on this epic. I feel like for a while we were putting a lot of things in here, and I feel like maybe some of these can come out, but I'm open to feedback. So please review and of course let me know if you have any questions. The other one on here that I think we can review today, just take another couple of minutes, is making the dependency proxy complete. I was really tempted, Steve, to move this to complete after the recent work that we've done. But I was thinking that if we are comparing ourselves to Artifactory or Nexus, that we should really look at this feature being complete as we support virtual registries for each of the package manager formats. I'm not sure that we'll need to cover it for everything. I don't know that we'll ever need to create a virtual Conan repository or even RPMs or Debian for that matter. What I hear most from customers today are these three, NPM, Maven, and NuGet most frequently. And then for GitLab, for us to replace our current vendor that we're using for Ruby packages, we would have to also support this proxying and caching feature. So these four are kind of the minimum. It'd be also nice to extend it to work the container registry instead of pulling from just Docker Hub, proxying and caching. You could also proxy and cache images from ECR or something like that, or Google's container registry. Python I hear frequently, not as frequently as these other few though. And then there's a few just defining the cadence for which we purge the dependency proxy. That's kind of an important issue, so we don't get in some storage problems in the future. But look at all the things that we've done. We've moved it to core. We've made it work with private projects. It works when Docker Hub is unavailable. We added purging of the cache, and we've done a pretty thorough investigation into what needs to be done to build virtual registries. So this is kind of it's a big epic, but this is really our goal for, I think, 2021 and 2022 really is probably working on this set of features.
May I ask a question on the dependency proxy work overall? I realized that it's been going on a little bit on the side, in the meaning that on the front end, and probably UX wise, we have a little bit more blurry view of the status of what is ready, what is going to be ready. Will it, since this is one of our important goals, will it make sense to think about it or have a demo session or something like that, just to get the point? This is one of the few topics where I don't understand where we are right now, for example.
I think that's a great idea. Actually, based on some feedback from, I think Ian suggested this, or maybe it was talked about in one of the channels, but having an investigation issue for how we can bring together the front end and the back end of the dependency proxy. So we have work lined up for future iterations. Ian, I know, put together some designs for how we display images pulled from Docker Hub. Right now, we have a feature that forwards requests for NPM packages that aren't found in your registry to the NPM public registry. In the future, that'll be a proxy and cache, and we could display packages and metadata that are pulled from the public NPM registry there as well. So I think having that discussion now is well timed. So yeah, I think that's a good idea, Nico. I'm happy to go through the make the registry lovable feature. Maybe that's one more that we could do, because that has some cool features on there, I think. So a couple of things and this, again, now we're getting much further out, so open to feedback if you think these things are not interesting or not valuable, but extend, right now the registry only works with the project level endpoint, although you could go to the group level UI and see them. A frequent request that we hear from customers is that they want the ability to use a group level endpoint or an instance or workspace level endpoint. So these are two features that are focused on that, basically creating new ways of you could publish the image. Let's see, setting your registry to public or private is independent of your project repository is a very frequently requested feature. A lot of companies out there share either their code, it's with other teams within their organization, or they would like to share their registry and not share their code. So they just want to be able to control the visibility of the registry and repositories separately. This issue, I think I could remove. I think we've covered that. There are some issues. I know Joam opened this dynamic read-only mode for individual repositories. The other thing I hear frequently from customers is tag immutability, support for signing images, and protected images. So those are things that frequently come up during customer calls. And then now we're getting a little bit lower, so into some of the problem validation. So we had a call with an important customer a few months ago, and we were talking about potentially creating a multi-cloud push-pull mirror. So we have some scheduled validation for if we'll do that in the future, although based on our research so far, it doesn't look like we'll do that anytime in the next 6 months. And yeah, this one needs some cleanup too, but I think I highlighted the most frequently brought up issues for that. Questions, comments?
I'm not, as far as the notes go, I'm not sure where we're at. Thanks everyone for sort of helping with the notes, but I added a couple of questions earlier on in what you're saying, Tim, just asking about maturity targets and percentages in the roadmap. So the first question was how often you update your maturity targets?
Well, I'm trying. Previously, not so much. I feel like it was not really part of the month-to-month process, but now that we're using maturity targets in this way and that we have them linked to these epics and that it's every month they're getting updated basically. For me, I'm using them during planning to make sure I didn't miss anything, and then I'm pulling it that we're moving our maturity targets forward each milestone. And then also just they get reviewed every month as part of our direction update. So like each month on the last week of the month, we have to update our direction page, and that includes updating the maturity targets. So usually they get looked at then.
Yeah, okay. And then, sorry.
Any shift on dates, I'm sorry, any shift on dates has to be approved as well. So if I wanted to just move, let's say, the dependency proxy back, not that it's a problem, but Kenny would have, look at it and say, well, why are we doing that? Does that make sense? And so there is like another check in there.
Yeah, okay, but it's sort of, is this inclusive of the long-term maturity targets, like the 3-year, whatever plan it is?
I haven't seen that. It's not tied to that at all. The next thing that can be improved on these are validating that these maturity targets are correct with customers. That's been something that's an ongoing GitLab product and design initiative that hasn't really moved forward that much. Ian and I are talking about doing that, but probably not in the next 3 months, but maybe in the next 6 months. It's a challenge to figure out how you could validate this with customers and score yourself. So it is somewhat arbitrary, and that's why I'm presenting it, because I want to make sure you all think these make sense and nothing's missing. But ideally, we would have a system of validating this, and then we would do so.
Okay. All right, thank you. And the next question I had was, with the roadmap view, are those percentages that you have up there actually accurate-ish? Like we don't need to be 0.2% or whatever, but like just sort of ballpark accurate.
Yeah, well, they're accurate in the sense that I'm not incredibly happy with this feature. So really what's here now is, for instance, we have our make the container registry complete. That target date right now is set, you can't see that, for May 2021. And so the % complete is the number of issues that are in this epic, how many of them are complete. So it's not, it's a pretty dumb number in that sense. So it doesn't really represent like total amount of work, because you can't do things like, it doesn't take into account weights and we don't have the other dates set yet. But I think one goal would be, it would be nice to have that information in here and make this something that we can review with customers. But that could be something that we work on moving forward.
Thank you.
Oh,
I
no
think
problem.
Steve has the next question.
Yeah, I was just curious, when it comes to like deciding what's prioritized between like should we drive through and try to get the completion category done on package registry versus, oh, we should do a little work on one of the lovable features just because it's very highly upvoted and whatnot. How do you weigh prioritization, or what's your thought process when trying to schedule and work on those? And I guess then a follow-up would be, how does the wider organization view these things? Do they only care about hitting the different maturity levels?
Yeah, there's that GitLab. Let's see if I could find a handbook. GitLab, we have kind of this prioritization process. I have to find this so much in the handbook, but it really starts with like security issues, bugs, existing functionality. So for me, a lot of what I think about is, are we supporting our existing functionality, and are there improvements that we need to make that will help people with what's out there today? Then after that, I could say, okay, well, what new features can we bring in that will add new functionality? And that's when I'm considering some combination of customer feedback and the maturity targets. So if it's something I promise to a customer, and several customers, and it's not a maturity target, we may still prioritize it. So I kind of look at it that way. It's like anything that's wrong or that is going to like bite us in the future if it's not supported, anything that's promised to customers, which frequently is, if it's promised to multiple customers, it ends up in a maturity target. And then finally, if something that's not in our maturity target, not promised by customers, but we think it would be helpful because of some other sensing mechanism, like how many upvotes it has, or if it's a backstage, or we don't have backstage issues anymore, but if it was a former backstage issue, those kinds of things.
Cool.
Okay. All right, any other questions on that, or we can move on to the next topic? Okay, so this, I thought we could just go through 2 rounds. So one thing that came up, you know, as I think everyone knows, we're working on this new manifest database for the container registry, and that will unblock a lot of features for us in future development. And Haley and Joam and I have been attending these CNCF meetings, and we're talking about how the API can be reworked in the future to provide more functionality. And so I thought it would be worth just taking maybe 2 minutes, and if you're interested, give maybe just one feature that you're most excited about adding when we have the new manifest database, and then the first thing that you'd like to fix in the second round. So we could start maybe with Steve, since you're on my top left.
I don't know. I mean, I'm excited for garbage collection and probably excited for having more metadata available to be accessed on the front end for users. So just allowing users to see more information.
And then Nico.
I was typing it. Okay, I'll say. So expanding on what Steve said, once we have more metadata, the ability to integrate those with the rest of the product and build value by being finally able to use this metadata and you know, correlate with the rest.
You mean like the pipeline and build and branch metadata? Yeah, I think that's gonna be
and more and more and more. Yeah.
I love that. Dan C.
Do we have multiple Dans?
No, I'm sorry, David. I put.
Yeah, I think I'm the only Dan. Anyway, yeah, I said, I think for me, I'm really excited about reducing the overall storage cost, which is pretty significant. That's really cool. Generally improved performance, I'm hoping for. I'm just, there's always the option to not. That's really cool. And deeper integration as well. I think having the a manifest database, having it in a data storage there, a database environment gives us a lot more ability to do different things with the actual data, and sort of modernizing a lot of the APIs and interactions will be fun too. I mean, just in general, the last thing I'm really excited about is the team's had a good chance to update a lot of that area of the code base that we're working with. So I think we have a much better handle as a team on where that code base is at. So that's really cool, as well as part of the process of going through this whole thing. Sophia?
I am also excited about the garbage collection, and also the fact that perhaps not directly as a feature, but the fact that we can finally start having tests for the registry and to have pipelines for this. That's very exciting from a quality standpoint. Who's next, David?
Haley.
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 Yeah, I think just having stuff in a relational database allows us to ask more interesting questions. We can, just be, not necessarily from a customer side necessarily, but from an admin side, being like, well, what percent of the actual storage is being used by this one group, or what's the average number of repositories under a group, or things like that you could actually do with SQL, and ask some questions, kind of get a feel for what the data is actually there and what it's like, because of the current metadata, it's really hard to get those kind of answers. And that ties into storage reporting too.
Nice, thank you. And then Joam.
Yeah, the first thing will certainly be fixing tag pagination. So that's not a feature. It was supposed to work, but it doesn't. So yeah, that should be helpful for the front end and even the back end. And then make the tag list requests take less than a second to complete, because we are now seeing a few taking over 30 minutes. Yeah. So that should be awesome.
30 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed those.
Yeah, because they never get to the front end. That's why.
And David.
Yeah, it's about the same. It's for me, it's the tags API. Currently, it's a central point to many things: the UI, the cleaner policies, and a lot of things. And currently, it's not performing well.
Thank you. I just added it'd be really nice to be able to see user and instance level data, who's using it and how, and really help me prioritize future issues. I think would be useful. And then this might be a duplicative question, but it looks like it is. But is there anyone that wants to call out the first thing you'd like to fix that they didn't call out in the first thing? No. Okay.
I have one.
Oh, good.
I have a mechanism to prevent abuse of the registry.
That's a good one. I think that for me, the first thing that I would like to fix is that group path updates breaks the registry. That's one that I hear about like once a week. It would be nice to clear that up. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next one. I think since we mentioned that we do have this issue for the dependency proxy and Ian's not here, I think it would be helpful if he was here for this discussion. So if it's okay, Steve, I'll move down this topic for next iteration, and then we could talk through your next topic.
Sure. So one of the things that's come up a few times is the way we look at and organize packages. So if we look at the first link that I have there under related issues, you can see how packages are set up where we have a package and then its package files, and then another package and its package files. And each package is a version of a package, and they aren't related in any way. And so this creates problems when trying to look at all of the versions together, or when you have things like with Maven, there's files that are shared between all of the versions. And we handle that in sort of these kind of like Frankenstein kind of ways of forcing things to work. And so really just like maybe having a conversation about should we be looking at somehow updating this structure, or how we can do this in a reasonable way that doesn't cause problems or create too much time. And so that's kind of what this idea is all about. And it looks like, I'll just see what Ian had noted here, is that from conversations with users, the proposed change of directly relating different versions of the same package aligns with the way that they think about using packages. It looks like Nico, you also had a comment.
Yeah, so if we're in the process of rethinking of the model structure, I think maybe we should see if to rethink the root models. So not having one table for all the package manager, for all the package types, but several tables could be something that we can do. I know I had several conversations with David around this, so the topic is there. Maybe it's a good time.
Yeah, I think we've all probably discussed that idea every once in a while, especially when new package managers get added, because every time we add a new package manager, the package model just gets kind of uglier and uglier with package specific or format specific methods, format specific validation, kind of just being all in one place. And so I think that could be discussed as like together with this, but also kind of as a separate thing, because splitting the package by type is sort of different than redefining the package and package file relationship, I guess is what you could say. But I think they're both important and worth addressing.
I have the next point. Yeah, the issue I see with any suggestion is that if we move the structure of the packages, we will need a way to migrate the existing data. And that's a big, I don't know, doubt for now. How do you migrate the existing data? The other thing is that I see two sides of this problem. One is the Rails side with the code. We can see some of these aspects on the code in the model class, which is slowly becoming what I call a bag of functions. It's a model with functions for dedicated types, but you have all the types in the same class. So it's becoming growing, and adding more functions for dedicated types. And the other aspect is the database side. One thing that is nice is that the code side can be reorganized without waiting on the database side, because we do have some tricks to reorganize the code and the model classes without waiting for the database. The database side will hit this issue of the existing data migration.
Do you see this as tech debt already, Steve?
Yeah, it's just it's kind of like a constantly growing tech debt that we have that I think at some point we'll be forced to address. And so it's kind of, we should try to stay ahead of it if we can.
So yeah, I think it sounds like a course of action here is to sort of, you can look at it as like, how would we, given what we know now, how would we refactor the package repository storage model to meet our current and future needs? And then like, that's kind of like almost like a blueprint process. So you might want to consider reaching out to Tom or one of the other staff engineers and working through that as a way to sort of think about forward-looking, how would we actually start from scratch right now if we were going to refactor it all, rather than just address issues that we might have. It sounds like you have that kind of mindset anyway, by the way.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
there's a
Thank
few
you.
notes. I think the second link there is kind of like looking at what's the optimal solution and what are some other options where, you know, if we can't start from scratch, what are some other things we can do to maybe reach a reasonable goal?
Yeah. So I think, does that sound like an action item that you'd want to take? Like reach out to Tom or Rubygems or one of the other staff engineers, Peter? I think Peter knows.
Yeah. I mean, I've got, there are a few different issues that address this. So I'll maybe ping a handful of other people to get some thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, I think in that blueprint, the architecture blueprint process is sort of, I think, intended to sort of look at these types of issues and try to address them in a way that gives people the space to really think about the big picture of it and come up with stepwise approach to achieving that goal. So I feel like this might be a good opportunity for you to work and look at that process. And cool. Tim?
I just added a question thinking about how we could prioritize this work in the future. And is it possible to do this like one format at a time, or does it have to be done like wholesale?
It is. That's the easy answer. We would definitely start by, you know, kind of what David described, by moving the code around without changing the underlying structure. And we could do that one at a time, and then start identifying how we could work on the structure.
Isn't this one of those problems where by trying to do the smallest step, there is a huge expense on overhead? That's what worries me a little bit, because I'm not an expert in this. I'm just talking by past experience. By moving the code only of one package manager, how much overhead we generate to have the API, for example, work in the same way.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It definitely creates some challenges with, then we have to maintain the 2 systems until we have time to finish. And because everything is open source, we can't necessarily control what is happening on each end. That actually reminds me of, we have this dual API authentication we're working through right now. And we have seen some community contributions come through that are trying to change the intent of the new authentication already. So it's hard to kind of juggle things as it's in process still. But that would definitely have to come into play during that sort of blueprint planning.
Cool. Anything else on that topic? Okay. Well, the last one we still have 5 to 7 minutes left, so I think it's maybe worth bringing up. So one thing that's been coming up consistently as we see more and more customers that are moving from Artifactory to GitLab, they're saying, how do I do this? We had someone reach out in Slack today, and I know we have this investigation issue, but I thought it would be worth just bringing up here and maybe having a short brainstorming session on how we could help customers with this. So getting their packages from another vendor into GitLab, and then also, recognizing that it's not just those files that need to move, they need to update their pipelines, they need to update their runbooks, and there might be other, thousands of files that they need to update in order to make this migration. And is there a way that we can help them and make that process smoother?
Just to verbalize for Ian, who isn't present, it's possible if an organization is using the dependency proxy, we can capture when their CI builds attempt to pull directly from Artifactory and create an alert to do to fix it, ? Try to aid users in identifying all those many locations, ?
Could we start with examples? Probably there is no solution that fits all, but there is a series of common cases that we could address through documentation, right? So if you are migrating with this type of configuration, you need to remember to change here, and there.
Yeah, I think documentation is a great first iteration of this feature, if we're calling it a feature, and it may be enough. We may not need to do anything else beyond that. I think that's a good idea.
I think the question here, and I don't know how to answer this, but maybe Tim can, is this something that is going to be upfront, and then the user won't need this anymore because there is a mass migration and there is a bunch of user migrating, or is something that they are going to need consistently across the years?
I think probably for the most part, it'd be something that's done a handful of times, not consistently. So what I've seen from the larger customers is they probably have many different formats that they support, and they would probably look to migrate like given pods off of Artifactory rather than wholesale, let's one shot get everything off Artifactory and into GitLab. So they probably say, okay, we're going to do all of our node packages this quarter, and then they would work on that. And then the next quarter, they would add their Python packages. For smaller customers with people that have, let's say less than 30 or less than 40 developers, they might do it all at once. So there might just be a step where they say, okay, we're going to bite the bullet and we're going to migrate everything and we're going to update all our runbooks at once. But the larger customers, it will take a bit longer. So I hope that answers your question. It's not so simply. Well, cool. We don't have to, I know we have an investigation and research issue. Is there anything that I can help answer before we start that investigation? Are there any things that you're like, well, this would be really, if we knew these things, that would make the investigation go much smoother, because then I could make sure I bake that into the research that I'm trying to do. Yeah, it's pretty nebulous. So we'll schedule that. Right now, that investigation is scheduled for 1311 and the research issue. It might be mistimed. I might try to start talking to some smaller customers sooner about their needs, and we can see what happens in the investigation issue in 1311. Okay, I think we have only 2 minutes left. So are there any questions, comments, feedback? Well, thank you everyone for your time and patience in going over the roadmap and maturity targets and everything. Please feel free to comment in that issue or any of the issues if you have any questions that come up after this or thoughts. And if not, I'll talk to you all soon. I'm going to stop the recording.